Hey everybody, I think we are live. Welcome to this week's show, and shout out to Gary, who is one of our regulars, who sent us an email and said he wasn't going to be here tonight. So in case Gary sees this later on, I just wanted to say hello to him. So, hey Carl, as I wait for you guys to trickle in here, feel free to post your questions below. In the meantime, I found a article I'd like to start out tonight by reading. This article comes out of Charlotte, North Carolina, from Queen City News, and it says that the local AMC, which is a movie theater, AMC North Lake, closed indefinitely due to HVAC issues. AMC North Lake 14 will be closed indefinitely due to HVAC issues, according to their website. As of Tuesday, June 20th, a banner on their page reads, quote, "We apologize for the inconvenience, but this theater is temporarily closed." So this says temporarily closed. So the article says indefinitely up here, but then on their website it says temporarily closed. Please continue to check back here for updates. And let's see, it looks like this might be a tweet that they sent out. The theater is located in North Lake Mall Drive near I-77. A spokesperson says they're awaiting parts and work by their vendor to resolve the issues at hand. Quote, "We do not have a reopening timeline at the moment, but will update guests via our webpage when the theater reopens," the spokesperson wrote. So I thought this was pretty crazy. According to this article, they're waiting for parts, and that was something we heard a lot a couple years ago with COVID and some of the other things going on. But it's quite disturbing that these folks are waiting on parts. Now, of course, we don't know the full story, and maybe there's more to it than that. But if it's simply that they're waiting for parts that they can't get, what a shame. What a shame that they've had to close their business, their local movie theater. I don't think that movie theaters are quite as what's the word? They're not quite as essential as a hospital or a doctor's office. But, that new movie comes out, and you didn't get to see it because your local theater is closed because they're waiting on a heat and an air part, So I think Charlotte's a pretty big area, so maybe there's other movie theaters. But, it's still just interesting that that's the reason they're having to close, that they're waiting on parts. So I just thought that was interesting. So let's see. Hey to Carl. Hey to Mark. Carl says it's 290 propane and R600 butane and A3 refrigerant. A3. Let's see. Let's look at our chart here. Refrigerant. I think that is correct. So I know that R290, I believe, is A3 and R600A. Yes, so they're both A3 refrigerants. And for those of you that don't know what Carl is asking, essentially refrigerants are kind of broken down into categories, and there's more to it than this, but essentially when we say A or B, or the number attached, we're saying whether or not its toxicity is high or low, and whether the flammability of the refrigerant is high or low. So the higher that number, the more flammable it is. If you were to say like an A1 refrigerant, that would mean it's A means low toxicity, the 1 means no flammability. And then if it was an A2, which is what some of these refrigerants that we're looking at are being introduced into the American market right now, like R32, They're A2 refrigerants, or A2L, and that is a little bit higher. They're still mildly flammable. They're not highly flammable, but they're considered flammable nonetheless, mildly flammable. And then A3 would be, like propane, or R290, which is highly flammable, low toxicity. You'll have to excuse me. I tell you, I've had a hard time shaking this cold. I think you guys have had to hear this crackly voice for the last 3 weeks, and I hate that for you. So hopefully you guys can hear me and understand me nonetheless. But yeah, we've I don't know, maybe it's an immunity thing, or maybe it's not so much that I still have a cold, it's just shaking the phlegm, and the raspy voice has been more of a chore this time around. So anyway, hey to Ryan. Ryan is one of our regulars as well. So hey to Ryan. Part 1, character limit for live stream comments. Read both parts before answering. Can you explain static pressure? What does the static pressure of 0.45, 0.5, 0.6 really mean? It's basically how much pressure, in a nutshell, it's how much pressure or resistance that airflow is having. So the thought process is a smaller duct with the same amount of airflow through it is going to have more pressure than a larger duct. So that's essentially all that means. Part 2, how much worse is a system with a static pressure of 0.6 compared to 0.55? I've never heard it explained in relative terms for homeowners to understand. Maybe we'll do a video on that, Ryan. But I think that the difference between 0.6 and 0.55 is pretty minimal, in my opinion, in my experience. It's usually when you start seeing, ductwork where there's, I don't know, if you start seeing ductwork where you're looking for 0.5 and you're actually getting like, 0.9 or 1.1, or, a highly, a lot of static on that ductwork, it usually means you're going to have issues. You're not going to get enough airflow across the coil. You could have other issues. Furnaces, you might get error codes. You've got a heat exchanger that is getting hotter than maybe it should because you're not getting enough airflow across it, so it'll fail prematurely. It won't last as long. It'll crack eventually because it's just getting too hot. And that's kind of the long and short of it. The reason we even pay attention to static pressures, or at least some of us do. Some heat and air guys, I don't think they do pay attention to static pressures, and they don't care. They're just slap it in, and the homeowner's the one that ends up paying for it in the long run. Hey, Arch is another one of our regulars. So hey to Arch out in Arizona. Carl says movie theaters in the past were always bad payers. Interesting. I've never dealt with, we do very little commercial as it is, and I don't believe we've ever had a movie theater as a customer. So most of our commercial customers have been restaurants, churches, a vet office we still have as a customer. So I don't think we've ever dealt with a movie theater. We have a school that calls us. So Brian says R290 is propane and R600 is isobutane. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. Isobutane. Some of the times I think you guys throw words out there you're like, let me just hear Josh try to pronounce this one. Low toxicity, 3 highly flammable. Yep. Ryan says North Lake Mall is rough. I'm Charlotte based. Ryan, are you the guy that they're waiting on parts? Are you the guy that's supposed to be ordering the parts for these folks? Is it difficult to convert an 80% to a 90% furnace? What is the process? I see contractors on YouTube installing high efficiency heat pumps with ACs with 80% furnaces. Why not convert to 90%? Is it about money? I I think there's probably more to it than just what I'm about to go over, but I think the main thing that heating and air guys have to consider when they're going to go from an 80 to a 90 plus furnace is two things. The first is the flue vent. So the flue vent on an 80% furnace is going to be metal. It's designed because of essentially 20% of that energy is going through the flue. It's hot and plastic would melt. So the flue has to be switched to usually some sort of plastic. Most guys run PVC. Some guys run other materials, but some sort of plastic. And the reason they do that is the temperatures are lower, and the thing is it condenses. So because the temperatures are lower, and we all know what condensing means, you have condensation on your windshield in the winter. You have condensation on your shower curtain or window glass when you're showering. Same thing with your flue vent. When those gases are escaping, the inside of that flue will literally condensate. And so it'll start to drain back to the furnace. And the second thing that you have to consider when going from an 80% to a higher efficiency furnace is because of that condensation, we now have condensation. You have to have a drain. You have to have something to get that condensation to go somewhere, so you may have to install a condensate pump to pump that condensation out of there. So just swapping the furnace, the box, is maybe not such a big deal. It's usually, in my experience, the flue vent is the main thing. And I think that's going to be the thing as we see states like California start to require, California passed last year where they said no more, let's see. I think they said no more furnaces at all, but I think, I'm drawing a blank now, but one of the other states said no more low efficiency furnaces, or maybe that was a national level. I think maybe that was Biden's administration that said no more low efficiency furnaces by a certain year. And, I think the issue for some folks is going to be figuring out what they're going to do about getting that plastic flue vent out of where it's located. Some houses, it's no big deal. It's just a matter of paying for it, having someone to run a new drain now, right? You're going to poke it outside somewhere. But in some houses, it's easier said than done. If that furnace is in a central location in that house, and you're going to have to figure out a way to get that thing poked out. In fact, I would say that there are going to be some furnaces that just simply need to be relocated because of it. And then you've got to figure out the ductwork side of things. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, the biggies, if you will. Hey, Gil. We've seen Gil here before, so said sorry he wasn't here last week. We missed you, Gil. We missed you. Adam says, I wish they would have never got away from R22. I think that is true for most heating and air guys. R22 was it was like God's nectar. I mean, it was that's what my old boss used to say, especially once it started getting expensive. But yeah, it was easier to work with. The pressures were lower. You could mismatch equipment. You could do a lot of things with R22 that I'm not saying you can't mismatch equipment with today's refrigerants, with 410 and some of these others, but sometimes you have issues, right? You really should have everything matching now, so you don't have issues and such. R22, I mean, I've seen some pretty goofy systems. I've seen, mismatched brands, and then you might have a 5-ton outdoor unit with a 3-ton coil inside. And, I mean, I've actually met technicians, not so many now, but years ago, that they didn't even know how to do a subcooler superheat measurement because they kind of just knew, it's, certain temperature outside today. It's hot. It's 90 degrees. So I know my pressures with the piston should be close to this, and they would just get it close, and R22 would work, it would get cold. And, I think that's where you'd always hear old timers say beer can cold, they would just grab that copper line. And these days you just simply can't do that anymore. You have to do everything with measurements and math to make sure it's right and running efficiently. Gail says, air conditioner fan won't shut off. What would be the possibilities? Be in repair. Unit was serviced about 6 months ago. If it won't shut off, you probably, it could be a low voltage issue. Maybe the thermostat is in the on position instead of auto. Maybe it is programmed incorrectly and sending voltage. Maybe it's picking up voltage off of something else. Another culprit might not be low voltage. It could be the high voltage, meaning whatever controls that fan. So if it's a relay, we just had one literally yesterday that would not turn off because the relay was stuck. So we literally unplugged all the low voltage wires from it, and it was still sending voltage through on the high side. And so that relay was bad. But I don't think that if you're a homeowner, none of it is going to be something that you're going to want to try to fix. You're going to want to get a pro in there and get a good permanent fix. Ryan says some manufacturers have variable speed systems for their premium units instead of an inverter. Are these terms interchangeable or are they different? I'll see terms like an inverter driven and variable. In general, if they're calling it a variable compressor, it's an inverter compressor. It's just a different verbiage, different brand. I have actually been in rooms, conversations where people at some of these manufacturers, some of these marketing executives and things like that, they're trying to come up with a term. Even now, they're trying to figure out terms that are easier for homeowners to understand because of all the lingo out there. And right now, I really do think this is going to become a thing because, when it was simply single stage, two stage inverter systems, those were your three categories. It wasn't that big of a deal. You could just use those terms and be, most folks could kind of tell the difference between what they were buying. But now you've got categories in almost like subcategories in those categories. So what I mean by that is, they're single stage, but they're ECM, or they're they're multi-stage, but instead of being just two stages, you've got brands that are making these compressors that are 3, 4, 5, even more than that stages. They're not an actual inverter compressor. They just have all these stages. And then you break it down into the inverter categories, and that's quite confusing. And that's the big one. That's the one you're going to see, I think, new terms come out soon. And I was in a meeting about a month ago where they were talking about this exact subject, because you've got non-communicating inverter systems now competing with communicating inverter systems, and they're almost trying to pretend like it's the same thing. They're actually happy that homeowners are confused. I'm not saying they've said that, but they are. They're happy that homeowners think that these Chinese-made products that are not communicating are just as good as a communicating inverter system, when they're just simply not, So I think you're going to see, these guys on this side I've actually been in a room where they were talking about coming up with some sort of verbiage, some sort of lingo that homeowners can say, that's not what I want. I want, I want the communicating inverter system. I want the actual better, more efficient, quieter system. So we'll see what happens with that, right? Carl says duct pressure is in inches of water column. Yep. Most pressures, that's how they'll usually measure it. Different even gas pressures and things like that, they'll measure it in water column. Adam says, Gilland, possibly an X13 blower motor bad module. That's another thing that it could be, a PSC, then possible bad motor or control of the motor. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if bad motor would necessarily mean that it would never turn off. It's usually something in the electrical itself. I'm not saying that it isn't a bad motor, but usually if that motor just simply won't stop, we're looking at either a low voltage or a high voltage issue of some kind, usually. Ryan says, why do pros prefer multiple smaller systems over zoning a larger tonnage, a multi-story, split level, or large ranch-style homes? It's not so much that pros prefer it, Ryan. I would say it's more that the homeowner is going to prefer it because of comfort. They're going to have more control over each zone. The more that system is zoned, so in other words, if I had a really large home that was 6 tons, it needed 6 tons of cooling, I could put a large 6-ton, or these days it would probably have to be a 7.5 ton, but just this really large system in there. Or I could do 3 2-ton systems and automatically they're zoned, even without actual zoning, dampers and things like that. You've got 3 separate systems that maybe a part of that house you don't spend as much time in, and yet that system doesn't need to run as much. Or maybe a part of the home is exposed to more sunlight, or it's on the second level and heat rises, or whatever. So I would say that that's usually why you see that more. And the other thing is, in a lot of homes, if you're going to have one single system and just zone it with dampers, you've got to figure out a way to physically get ductwork to different parts of the house. So I'm not saying that's impossible, but sometimes folks don't want a duct running from the crawl space all the way to the attic. It's just easier, or, makes more sense to just install 2 separate systems, so just a couple scenarios for you. Courtney Brad, hey, just had a Bosch 20 SEER installed for humidity reasons. I'm scared they didn't install properly. How would I know? Well, I guess the main thing is, if you're concerned with humidity, is keep an eye on the humidity. I did a whole series on poor installation practices. You should check out if you've never seen that. Because that was a question we were getting a lot. Folks would say, well, Josh, you always say the brand doesn't matter as much as the install. And I hear other heat and air guys say that. What does that mean? And so I did a whole series of videos on things you can look out for, that poor installation on that system would involve. So check out that series if you've never seen it. Let's see. Give me 1 second, guys. It's a little warm in here, and as a great chubby heating and air guy that I am, I'm going to turn the temperature down a little bit. If you can wait just a moment. Okay. Chubby heat and air guys get hot and sweaty. So Ryan says, with availability in your area aside, what other brands would you install now based on their current lineup if Daikin was not available, including one brand that might surprise people? You're trying to stump me tonight, Ryan. I look at a number of things, and I think there's a number of things that Daikin does well that I think other brands do well, but maybe they don't do everything as well as Daikin does for us. I have friends that won't install anything but Carrier. I have other friends that won't install anything but Linux or Train. And so we all have our preferences. For me, I was installing Daikins or Goodmans at times. And for me, I wasn't getting any callbacks on those, and I couldn't say that about several of the other brands out there. And I'm not going to bash any brands. I'm just saying we were installing them and they would have an issue or two. Some brands we would get the unit and out of the box, the fan motor was bad, things like that. And I'm like, did they not test this in the factory? So I think that that's part of it. If I were to start looking for a new brand, I would probably install a few different ones and see which one seems to be, more reliable kind of deal. Another thing that I look at is I look for support, so if I have an issue, do I have someone that I can pick up the phone and call? And again, I'm not going to bash any brands, but there is another brand that I think that their products are pretty decent, but I've never felt like that that the support was quite there. And, I think it's another thing when I've always felt like, and I'm sure other heating and air guys would probably disagree, we all have our preferences, but there are a few brands that they almost have this attitude of, you should feel worthy that we're going to let you even sell our brand, and that never sat well with me. I remember meeting a rep one time. I had been selling his products, his brand, for 2 years. I had started Griffin Air and I was selling his brand, and he was the outside sales rep. He comes into town, and instead of saying, on our first ever meeting, it's the first time I've ever met the guy, instead of him saying to me, "Hey Josh, thank you for your business. Here's a free pin, a free hat. We appreciate you. Thank you for selling our products." Literally the very first thing the guy says to me, and maybe it's just a personality thing. Maybe I'm just sensitive as, the chubby kid that got picked on in middle school. But the very first thing the guy says to me is, "Hey, good to meet you. We're going to set some goals for you today. And if you don't meet those goals, we're no longer going to let you be a dealer for us." That's literally the first thing the guy says to me. And so I just think that, again, does that mean that brand is bad? Does that mean that the products are bad for that brand? No. In fact, you as a homeowner, if you were to have that brand or another brand, that should not deter you, that just because I'm a sensitive heating and air guy, but I do think that it makes a difference when the brand appreciates the dealers enough to pick up that they're going to answer the phones. They're going to go to bat for you. They're going to step up when the homeowner isn't happy with something and make it right, and things like that. So that's all things. I know I did not do what you wanted me to and surprised you with a brand, but I think that those are all things that matter. And I'll tell you the last thing. I actually have a YouTube video coming up on this exact topic, and that is there is this attitude right now that, especially with some of the people that comment on my videos, where they think that, and some of you guys watching this might even feel this way. They think that all products, whether they're made in America or not, are the same. And they'll even make comments on my videos, and I think they sound smart, but they'll say things like, "Well, Josh, nothing, every component can be made here. So they're all the same anyway. And I disagree with that. I have been to American factories and watched units. Now, I'm not saying every component in that heat pump is made in America. I'm not saying that. But I have seen products where it was metal coming in one end of the factory and heat pumps going out the other end of the factory. Now, maybe those control boards were made in Thailand or whatever that is now in that heat pump. But I've literally seen coils, the metal being bent in the factory and them making the coil. And so when homeowners, or when I see comments where they'll say, well, this Chinese brand, just because it's not made here, to me, that matters. They support American jobs. I've seen thousands of people go to work in that place. And my dad even works in an American heating and air facility where they build heating and air systems. Now, he works in a commercial facility where they build units that are as big as my house. But it's still, I think that's unfair. It's unfair to say, well, they're all made the same. Whether they're made right here in the U.S. or they just, ship it into the U.S. and screw a couple screws into it and pop a sticker on it. That's just ignorance when they say that, because they don't. I've seen it. That's not what they're doing. They're not having the system made elsewhere and then just putting 2 screws in it just so they can say assembled in America. That's not been my experience. So anyway, I got on my soapbox there for a minute and I've gotten behind on our comments here, but I have a video coming out soon on that exact topic, because I think that's just, it's unfair and it's ignorant for people to say that. If you think a car made in China is the same thing as a car made in America or, I don't know, Germany or whatever, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. It's no knock on China. I think they have a place, cheap products have a place, but heating and air products, it's not for them to say, oh, well, they're, Gree is just as good. Oh, I threw a name out there. Gree is just as good as these other brands, even though that, the Flex is imported into the country. It's not. Stop it. That's just my 2 cents. There might be heating and air guys in here when I catch up on these comments that'll say that they disagree, but I'm just saying that's my thought on that. Adam says they are going to change over to the new units to R454B in 2025. Adam, I think it's going to be sooner than that. According to the that law that was just raised by the EPA, they're saying that January 1st, 2025, that 410A units can't be sold by then. So I think we're going to start seeing these 454B and these R32 units be introduced sometime in the next 12 months. I would say by next summer. I would hope that you're going to be able to have at least laid your hands on some of these products by next summer. I hope they don't wait till the very last minute to try to transition everything. Otherwise, not just movie theaters are going to be hurting here. They need to come out with the products and kind of transition 410A out by that date. Arch says, I found an HVAC tech who thinks he can find and fix the leak in our heat pump, but he didn't show. So I'm trying to make an adapter out of the cardboard to install a portable AC in our bedroom. Man, Arch, you've been fighting that fight for weeks now, and I know it's hot out there. So I hope you find somebody good soon. So Arch is out in Arizona, guys. If you know any good heating and air companies out there, please help a fella out. Ryan says the video with you on site is doing well. Nice change of scenery. Hopefully it encourages you to do more. In more of your old videos, there was a pond in the background. Do you like to fish? I do like to fish. I just don't get to do enough of it. My brain, if the fish aren't biting within a half hour, I just can't sit there. My dad used to do that when we were kids, and I think it just really turned me off. So, but that pond you see in some of my videos, that's actually right in my front yard. I've been blessed. I grew up in a trailer park, so I have to say that I've been blessed now to, where we live now. I feel blessed. Ryan says, when you do sheet metal ducts, Do you use an inner liner to sound dampen and wrap the outside? And do you prefer round or square ducts when using sheet metal? Are there different applications for each? That is a loaded question, Ryan. So I think in short, in a perfect world, I'm always going to run round duct in a perfect world. Now, there are times when that just simply isn't possible. But if I can run round, I'm going to run round. If there's room and it makes sense, I'm going to run round because of the, the issues with corners and static and things like that. I can usually balance a round duct trunk line way easier, and then inner liners. We don't usually install inner liners. However, we will get plenums at times, and also our filter grills. So when we set those boxes, they are lined, and they do sound dampen. But we don't just line them on the inside and out. And are there different applications for each? Yes. So it just depends on the house, depends on what you're trying to do, and so on. Arch says only one contractor put static pressure testing and adjusting on the estimate for a new package heat pump install. None of the others even mentioned it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, we don't mention it on our proposals, but we do it, so maybe there's a reason they didn't, mention it. I don't know. I don't want to get too much into contracts, but I had a customer years ago that the company that we were buying our heating and air equipment from adjusted one digit. It was the same product, but it was a newer product, and they adjusted one digit on the model number, and the guy tried to say that I voided the contract, and it was a mess. And so there are certain things that I'll intentionally not put on the contract now, but I help folks on our website, New HVAC Guide, and I'll sometimes send them one of our proposals just to show them, because they'll be getting all these proposals that are so vague. They'll if you get a proposal that's only 1 page long and it only has 10 sentences on it, if that's way too vague for me. I want things to be spelled out. I want a contract on that. I want that proposal to have certain things to be in writing. I would say a good proposal should have no less than 5 pages of writing. I want certain things to be spelled out. And, so at this point, Arch, I think that you unfortunately won't be able to be so picky. I think you just need to find a really good heat and air company that's going to show up for you and take good care of you. And, maybe not have quite so many things spelled out. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I know you've been waiting a while now. Adam says, I've seen some PSC motors electrically shorted, making the motor continuously run. Interesting. I've definitely seen modules that do that on variable speed stuff. But I believe you. Sean says, can steam humidifiers be installed on the return side or only on the supply? If okay on the return, any distance from the furnace or filter needed? It's a good question, Sean. I'll be completely transparent with you. We don't install a lot of humidifiers where I live, and the few that we do install, they're not usually steam. I mean, I'm not saying we've never installed one, but I could probably count on one hand how many I've installed. So maybe Adam or some of these other pros might be able to answer that question. But my answer to a lot of those questions is read the instructions. There are times that certain components will let you skin a cat a different way. So it'll spell it out in there. So for example, when we get our dehumidifiers, it's funny, they'll give us different scenarios. They'll say, and when installing this dehumidifier, this is the preference, this is the way we want you to install it preferentially, but you can install it this, and this way. They give us like 6 ways, but they give us the one that they want it. They want it, I can't remember. I think connected to the return and then returning on the return or the supply. I can't remember, but that's the preferential way. And then they give you several other ways. So if you find the one you want, Sean, see if you can grab the instructions and you might get your answer just from that, Ryan says, how do you determine what size heat kit or strips are needed on a system? So Ryan, heat strips have BTU ratings, and in general, now this could change depending on different things, but in general, I think you could use this, and that is 5 kW of heat on a heat kit is going to be the equivalent to around, and I'm rounding here because there is a specific number, but it's around 17,000 BTUs. So that would mean if a 5 is 17, a 10 is going to be 34,000. And let me find my little handy dandy calculator here. 17 times 3, a 15 is going to be 51,000 BTUs. So hopefully that answers your question. It depends on, how many BTUs do I need? Am I pairing this with a 5-ton system? Well, I need to do a 15 kW. Am I pairing this with a 2-ton system? Well, I really only need a 5, Ryan says, for Bosch, I hear installers need to review the dip switches and fan speed to do better with humidity. I concur. Bob says, sorry, I'm late again. Bob, come on, man. You're late again. Just kidding. Welcome to the show. Ryan says, Josh, you don't have a phone app to control your AC. Haha, old school walking over to the thermostat. Funny, Ryan. I do have a Wi-Fi thermostat in my downstairs. I don't up here, and there's a reason for that. I'll tell you guys the story. It's a long story, but the short version is we installed this thermostat. It's a Wi-Fi thermostat in this lady's house, and she thought that the problem she was having was the thermostat. So she made us pull that thermostat out, and now it's still connected to this day to her Honeywell account. She never, and I tried to attach it to mine, and I can't. So, but I didn't feel right throwing the thermostat away, and I didn't feel right reselling it to somebody. So I stuck it up here in my upstairs. So that's why I don't have a Wi-Fi enabled thermostat up here. Well, I guess technically it is Wi-Fi enabled, but it's not able to be, brought over to my account. JP says, what are your thoughts on offering hard starts to units under 10 years old? It depends on the situation, JP. There are some systems that from the factory have a hard start on them. So I definitely don't think they're a bad thing. It just depends on the brand. It depends on the system, and depends on the situation. I think hard starts are a good thing, but I don't always think they're necessary. And I don't think that they necessarily extend the life necessarily. I mean, I guess maybe they do a little bit because they're getting that compressor on and it's less wear and tear from that standpoint. But I don't know that there's any scientific data that shows a system with a hard start versus a system that doesn't. The compressor is going to last X amount of years longer. Whereas with a soft start, it is less wear and tear on that system. And I have heard of folks, getting more years out of that system. If the system does not have a hard start from the factory, I'm only going with a hard start if they're starting to have issues, usually. But that's just my 2 cents. I know there's other thought processes. In fact, there's another heating and air guy that I'm kind of pals with that posted a video just a week or two ago on the two and when he does one versus the other. So Ryan says, let me guess what brand American Standard in your story, Josh. No. But we did sell American Standard for a while. So I'm not going to say what brand with that outside sales rep. But yeah, so Ryan says, for blower wheel cleaning, is there a proper way of doing it? Would it be with a can of compressed air to blow the dust off, or cleaning the evaporator cleaner and water hose? It depends on how bad it is, Ryan. I used to have a toilet brush, and you can make fun of me if you want, but I used to use a toilet brush that I had bought that had never touched a toilet, and I would use those. I'd get it up in there and clean it real good. And but if I got one that's real bad and I've got to pull it out and take it outside, then yes, maybe I will, spray some cleaner on there and let it sit for a minute, just like I would a coil, and then spray it down. But I'm definitely disconnecting it from the motor when I do that. Chris says, have a high elevation, large cabin with no HVAC, only electric baseboard heat on main level and sub level, partially below grade. Recommendation on cold weather mini split. Man, I would hate to see your electric bill, Chris. I like Daikin. That's what we sell at Griffin Air. And you might say, well, Josh, that's because you sell it and they've sponsored a video or two of yours. The thing I noticed with Daikin when we started selling it, because you can compare Daikin to some of the other brands out there, and the SEER ratings might not be as high, but their performance in cold temperatures, I have noticed, here in Virginia, has been great. Now, I do think the further north you go, when you get up into Canada especially, you need to pay attention to the ratings on that. And regardless of the brand, make sure that you are, installing a system that can work in those very low temperatures. But I used to sell another big brand, and I did not feel like their lower end systems did well enough in the wintertime for me to continue to sell that brand. I was having to go with their absolute top system to be able to get the same performance that Daikin was offering on their normal system. So the 19 series Daikins perform very well below freezing temperatures in my experience. So, but I think that as long as you stick with one of the big three, Chris, I would stick with Daikin, Mitsubishi, or Fujitsu. Find a good contractor to install it. And I would go with, if you are in a very, very cold area, just go ahead and bite the bullet and get the system that costs more, that's good for those low temperatures. We've got a few Daikin systems that we just did the 19 series, and they have no other form of heat here in Virginia, and I haven't heard back from them in a good way. So to me, that speaks volumes. So Chris says cooling will be a benefit as well, as many dehumidification as high has barely hit 75. Well, yeah, and if you go mini splits, not only will they, cool, but they'll have that humidity setting. So if you are in a cabin, that's always a good thing too. So I don't know what the humidity is like where you're at. It sounds like it might not be as big of an issue if it's that cold, but you will have that function as well, which is always a plus in cabins. Hey, Henry says, is it a bad idea to have my HVAC system replaced by my home warranty if I am considering canceling my protection plan at some point? It's a good question, Henry. I think part of the my question to you is, are they going to replace it for you for free? Because some home warranties don't. They're going to make you pay for something, at least. And and I'll just leave it at that. I think that if you can sleep well at night knowing that, you had them replace your system and then you canceled your policy, if you've paid them enough over the years that you feel that is something you're entitled to, then, I don't know what else to say, Is it a bad idea is what your question is. I don't know that it's a bad idea, you know. I think those home warranty companies have taken advantage of enough people that at least some of them have, that, you know, I would sleep okay in some situations anyway. Ryan says, ensure the mini split can work in low ambient temperatures. Look for terms like hyperheat, max heat, extreme heat, etc. Daikin calls it their Aurora line. But yeah, usually most of these companies, you're going to be able to go to their website and get those ratings. You know, what temperature does it heat down to? And that's probably the case with at least all the main brands. Carl says, Arch, too bad you're in southern Arizona, and I'm in northern Arizona. Adam says, I don't like R454B. We can't even weld any components anymore, and we will have to do a dry sweep of nitrogen before we even open the system up. I think my other concern with the 454B, Adam, is the fact that it's so new. You know, R32 has been used for so many years overseas that it's been tested a little bit. And the other thing is it's pure. You know, you're working with a pure refrigerant, just like R22 was, and 454B is going to be another blended refrigerant, you know. So we've already talked tonight about how great R22 was. And so I have to be honest, it's nice hearing that we might be getting back to a pure refrigerant instead of blended to work with, you know. We can't even unweld any R454B components and have to use nitrous. Yeah. I would say in general, you probably should be doing that anyway. You know, I think it's in general a good idea to cut things loose instead of unsweating them. But, you know, I know what you're saying. There are times where it just, you either can't, or it's a whole lot less of a headache of a job to just unsweat it. CC says, Linux does not dehumidify if you have a zone system, even if you take it off zoning and ventilate and dehumidify, and it's still at 65% humidity. I called the tech to come out 5 times, still can't fix it. I think there's some things that they could probably do to help you make it dehumidify better, such as slowing down the airflow and things like that. But, you know, you're affecting capacity. There are times that, depending on the situation, you might have to get a dehumidifier. You know, if you need some better dehumidification, there are limits to what an air conditioning system can do, you know. So maybe it just simply is reaching temperature and it's not getting to dehumidify enough. You know, there's always scenarios. Henry says, what is your opinion about the Train XR14 AC 3-ton and the Train S9 B1 one-stage ECM motor 80K gas furnace? Asking because this is the HVAC system that my home warranty is proposing for replacement. I don't know where you are, Henry, but 14 is definitely the minimum, and where I live, I don't think you can even get 14 SEER stuff anymore. I know you can't with heat pumps, and that's mostly what we install. But, you know, Train is fine. I sold American Standard for a number of years, and if I would care more about if the heating and air company is good or not. You know, just because the home warranty company is paying for it, I would still want a good install. You know, I would worry less about the brand of the equipment, and I would worry more about that heating and air company and making sure they do a good job. Ryan says, the bedroom under my furnace that's in the attic hears a lot of blower fan and kind of vibrates. Will hanging it when I do my next system help with any of these issues? It will a little bit, as long as it's hung correctly. You know, so if it's resting on those rafters, you know, hanging it up a little bit might help. But just realize if it's not hung correctly, keeping vibration in mind, it could still vibrate those roof joists, which can cause noises and vibrations. So just keep that in mind. But they make products to reduce vibrations, you know. CC made some comments about Linux again. Arch says, thanks, we're definitely sweating out here. I sued to fish for crappie on Bull Run and Sandy Lake in Virginia. Bull Run. That sounds familiar. So that's up north. Okay. Northern Virginia. I think there's a one called, there's like bull this and calf that, you know, here in Virginia. And I think out where I grew up, there's a small stream or creek called Calf Pasture, I think is what it was called. My dad used to go out there. So, but that's pretty cool, Arch. Small world. Ryan says lots of professionals dislike Linux due to the leaky coils. Adam says, Sean, no, it just needs to be installed in the return duct. CC says, can you have to collaborate the thermostat for humidity? Could it be wrong? CC, I need more context. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying there. I'm sorry. Adam says, Henry home warranty companies are a joke. Brother, don't fall for those schemes. We did a video. If you guys, it's one of my older videos. We did a video on some of my experiences with home warranty companies. And I was actually invited to talk on a podcast after that you can find on our website. If you go to Griffin Air and go to the About Us, you can click on the where I was a guest on a podcast and talked about some of the home warranty company stuff. That was a lot of fun, actually. That podcast, they talk about all kinds of things like UFOs and ghosts and things like that. And then he was doing a show on home warranty companies and some of the other, you know, things, scams and things like that for homeowners, and had me on talking about that. So that was kind of fun, actually. Sorry, guys. Ryan says, have you heard that most of your customers are qualifying for the government rebates on these heat pumps? I'm afraid I won't qualify and don't want to rely on that when deciding on my next system. It depends. There's so many variables. It depends on which program they're looking at. I think there's 5 of them. There's one that seems to be more popular than others, but yeah, I think before you pull the trigger on anything, especially if you're buying a heating and air system and you're looking at one of the programs that came with the Inflation Reduction Act, I definitely would talk to a CPA or whoever does your taxes before you spend the money. And I would want something in writing, making sure that it's going to, you know, qualify. And the other thing is I would definitely make sure I get the AHRI certificate from the contractor, preferably on the heating and air system that they're installing, so that way I know for a fact it's the SEER rating and everything that I think that it's going to be. So Arch says, I wanted a 15.2 or 16 SEER unit installed instead of the 13.4114 SEER package unit that I've been quoted. So that's why we're still without a new heat pump. Keep hunting, Arch. There's got to be a good heating and air company out there. You just need to shop around and keep looking. Ryan says, Josh, I had the same issue with a Honeywell thermostat when I bought my house. Yeah, that's another time. If the old homeowner moves out and it's attached to their account, that's a good point. It was connected to the previous owner's account, and I installed the non-learning, it says leaning, but learning Nest, and like it a lot. Yeah, some of the folks that do Nests, they love them. They're diehard Nest fans. I don't think you're going to find too many heating and air guys. They're out there, but there aren't as many heating and air guys that love Nest. So Adam says, have a good evening. I'm heading out. Have a good night, Adam. Thanks for joining us. I love it when you pros jump on here. Most of y'all are smarter than me anyway. Ryan says, Henry Koba Jr. and here that when home warranty companies replace units, they are builder grade at best. Yeah, they're usually, they've got to keep their costs down, so they're going to do that. Arch says, what about a thermostat that has a startup delay to protect the compressor like in some of the Honeywell thermostats? I would say most digital thermostats today have that function. Now, whether it's turned on or not, is another thing. But I think most digital thermostats have that delay. Arch also says, isn't Trane and American Standard more complex and labor intensive to repair than some of the other brands? I don't know. I wouldn't say that necessarily. It just depends. They do have the spine fin coil that you have to consider, but usually on those units, the reversing valve is actually on the outside of the spine fin coil. So I would maybe even argue that they're a little easier to get to. So I don't know. They all have their quirks, and I don't think Trane's an exception to that. I think they have quite a few quirks. But I wouldn't just say in general that they're more complex than or anything like that. Arch says, Ryan, I have the same question regarding the rebates. I was hoping we could take advantage of the IRA rebates for replacing an old heat pump with a more efficient one. Philip says, thanks for that video on the sound. I got an outdoor condenser unit that was quieter than the Carrier 25HHA. Thank you for that. Kind words. It was a lot of fun doing that, and I do like getting out there, but it just depends on what the topic is. My goal has always been to kind of inform homeowners. So if I don't need to go outside and stand by a heat pump just to tell you that, the new refrigerant just launched, well, I'm usually just going to, jump in front of the camera here and say, hey, the new refrigerant just launched. So it just depends on the topic, but that was a lot of fun to do. I had one of my employees behind the camera, so he was cracking me up with that because he's like, this is what you do, and I'm curious. I haven't got to talk to him since I made that video, but I'm wondering if he, because he got to see the raw footage get recorded and how unorganized that could be. But, my brain, I'm like, well, I got to make sure I get this shot, and I got to make sure that I record this, and I got to make sure I talk about these items. And sometimes they're not in that order, but when it comes time to edit the video, everything gets straightened out and it's all in that order now, So I actually am curious what his thoughts are. If he actually watched that finished video, he was probably like, really? That's how it turned out, that mess that I saw of a recording. So it's after 9:30, guys. Make sure you get your questions in. Tech Junkie, long time no see, pal. Ryan says, I'm right there with you on that. Arch. Tech Junkie says, if it's hung correctly, that's words of wisdom from the wife. No comment on that. Arch says, Carl, too bad because it's much cooler up north. And then Carl says, home warranty companies are going to go as cheap as possible. That is so true. Henry says, my home warranty is offering some discounts, but it looks like I'm going to have to pay for most of the costs. I am worried if I cancel my protection plan, it might affect the labor warranty. Yeah, just get everything in writing, buddy. I would make sure that, you don't do something that, that you regret later as well. Tech Junkie says, my brother has a home warranty and they are amazing. I think you've said that before to us, and maybe you plugged that company. I have not personally run across a home warranty company that I think is amazing, as you say, but I'm not saying they're not out there. He had a new hot water heater and they did a great job. Then his dishwasher went out and they put in an amazing Bosch, super quiet and does a great job. That is rare. I'll give you that. Ryan says, Tech Junkie, do you mind sharing the name of that home warranty company that your brother uses? Arch says, I used to. Bull Run Marina. And that's where the Battle of Bull Run, I think. Interesting. CC says, I like the old video you did where you don't blink, LOL. I wonder which video that was. Did I look like a deer in headlights? where I wasn't blinking because I was so scared to be in front of the camera. That might have been possible. Tech Junkie says, Ryan, I just texted him. I'll let you know when he gets back to me. Gil says, I finally got my air conditioning and heating unit fixed yesterday. That's awesome. Arch says they're pretty busy right now and will be calling me when business slows. However, I hope to find someone by then. Ryan says, Tech Junkie, thank you. If the live stream ends before you get that information, please provide it in the next live stream. Carl says, any new inventions, Josh? Yes. Thank you, Carl. Let's stop for a moment and do our segment for new inventions. And I got one more thing that I want to ask you guys before we jump off here tonight as well. But let's see, which invention do I want to talk about tonight? Yeah, let's go with this one. So, have you guys ever seen those, let me see if I can, temperature. You guys ever seen those cameras that can see temperatures? So if you guys look right here on the screen, those cameras that kind of, they can see the temperature of things. I've seen a lot of home inspectors use them to see where, maybe a leak is. But like here's one that shows, the temperature of a person. And my invention, and I know some of you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but they've already got thermostats out there that have geofencing technology. They also have proximity sensing. They even have ductless systems that have an eye that can see you in the room and split the air so it doesn't blow directly on you. So my invention tonight, my hypothetical invention, feel free to steal this, is temperature sensing thermostats. It would have some sort of camera or some sort of something that would sense you, and that thermostat would know how hot you are. It can see that you're getting warm and adjust the temperature accordingly. Oh, you just came in from a run. You look kind of warm there. Let me turn the air on for you. Me and my goofy inventions. Carl asked for it, so there's my invention for tonight. Let me know what you guys think of my latest invention, hypothetical invention, temperature sensing thermostats that will turn on if it sees that you're hot or cold. Maybe it'll see when people are different temperatures in the room. So it's like, well, Josh is chubby, so we're going to turn on the AC on his side of the room, but his wife looks cold. Before she grabs a blanket, maybe we need to give her a little puff of air. So Carl says, it's my fault for asking. Yeah, we've gone through some inventions. We talked about geothermal loops that could be dropped in when foundations are dug for homes. We've talked about Bluetooth thermostats that you don't need any wires in the house. The outdoor unit would Bluetooth connect to that thermostat, and you never have to worry about connecting low voltage wires again. And then we've also talked about those mini splits that would be recessed in a wall, where the outdoor unit would just have the fan that's flush with the wall blowing out, and then the indoor part would be like a mini split blowing into the room. So this week's invention is temperature sensing thermostats. So let me know if you guys would love for Big Brother to be seeing how hot you are in your house. Philip says, what's the current consumption of a 3-ton Fendt? Maybe a small shorts with a clamp meter operating in a hot day. Well, I mean, obviously it ramps up and down. I did see a video. There is a video that there's a guy that works for Daikin, James Turner, sent me one time that they did an amp clamp reading on a fit, and I want to say it was a 4-ton fit, and it was only drawing 4 amps while it was running. So, obviously it probably ramps up and down, and there's times it's drawing more energy than others, but he said that it was running and I'm maybe even full capacity and it was only drawing 4 amps. So I could be wrong on that though. Don't hold me to that. Yeah, maybe that's something we can do at some point. Just kind of show an amp clamp, reading a measurement of a couple different systems while running and what their energy consumption is. Ryan says, do we get warmer? I thought we maintained a 98.6 degree unless we had a fever or something. That's a good point. I guess I meant more like it would sense. Well, no, I think we do change in temperature, don't we? Right? I mean, there's times when you put your hand and you're warm, and then there's other times when your hands and feet are cold or whatever, right? Your surface temperature. So, I think you're right on your internal temperatures, but I think there's times when you change, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm ignorant on that. Bob says, next thing we need is thermostats that think for us. Be careful, Bob. With AI technology, that might be coming. In fact, Carl says with AI, artificial intelligence, who knows what's around the corner? Yeah, I actually do think that I've actually said that in a few videos. I see a day where heating and air systems use AI technology to not just turn the system on, but it can say, hey, the humidity is this and the temperature is that, and so I need to do this or that to make, because we all know that humidity plays a role in comfort too. 72 degrees in your house where it's less humid might not be the same as feel as 72 degrees in my house where it's higher humidity, So I do think that whether it's AI enabled or just in general, I do think there will come a day where thermostats are going to, consider more than just the temperature. I already, not only do I think that, it's already out there. There are commercial buildings that are using AI technology for similar. Now they use it more from an energy efficiency standpoint to try to save energy, but it's still using AI technology. Carlos says, thoughts on the Carrier Infinity versus iWave air purifiers. Asthma sufferer here and concerned about the iWave producing ozone and making things worse and not getting smaller particles. Is there a real difference? Well, the iWave doesn't remove particles. It's just an ionizer, but it does not produce ozone. So that I don't know who told you that, but the iWave does not, at least the last time I looked it up, iWave. It says certified to produce no harmful levels of ozone. UL 290 ozone emissions certified. The needle point bipolar ionization process does not produce ozone, according to this website. So I don't think the iWave does produce ozone. But you hear people say, that's one time I remember a company was trying to bash us, and they were telling the homeowner, oh, he's trying to sell you something that produces ozone. And people it scares people when they hear stuff like that, So I think that is a term that's thrown around a bunch, and it does concern people because there are air quality products out there, indoor air quality products that do produce ozone, some of them purposely. So yeah. Ryan says we do need per thermostats though that uses technology like robot vacuums that can map an area then see temperatures to more accurately flow air to certain hot spots. Interesting. LiDAR and camera based mapping with temperature sensors. Carl says AI will probably advance self-diagnostic equipment. Yeah. I think AI is probably here to stay, and it's going to advance a lot of things. We'll see though, I think there are going to be certain products that it's going to be implemented and folks aren't even going to necessarily understand that it's being implemented, you know? Carlos says maybe it was other ionizers that produce ozone. Could be other people making it up. Great advice. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would just look it up. There are products that do produce ozone out there. And again, some of them do it on purpose for odor control and things like that. So if that's something you're sensitive to, another suggestion that I'll give folks sometimes is, you know, let a homeowner know, let a company know that you want to try a product and just say, you know, I want to try it. I've said that to homeowners before. Hey, I'll let you try it. And if you don't like it, I'll pull it out and I'll just charge you the hour of time that my guy had to spend installing and then removing it. So as long as you're okay with, you know, us charging, you know, not reimbursing that back to you, if you buy the product and then we do remove it, you know, we'll just give you your money back minus that technician's time. And we've had folks take us up on that. So maybe that's something you might consider if you find a heating and air company that's willing to do that, you know. Bob says, scary thing with AI will fire folks who do not design good equipment or perform all sorts of services. Well, there you go. You know, AI know if that system was installed right, you know. Anyway, we've had a lot of new faces tonight, so I want to say thank you and welcome to those folks and ask you to subscribe if you have not subscribed to our channel again. And I told you guys I have a question for you before we wrap up tonight. And my question to you is, we spilt the beans last week on the upcoming trip to Daikin's factory, where we're going to be going kind of behind the scenes. We're going to shoot some videos and show you some things that maybe you have never seen before, get you behind some closed doors. And so we're excited about that. And my question to you is, if there's anything that you've always wanted to see or something that you've always wondered about a factory, a manufacturer, anything in particular that you might want to see or ask directly to those folks, please let me know in the chat section if you have any questions on that. And, you know, maybe we'll do our best to try to accommodate some of that. So Tech Junkie doing some name dropping on some home warranty companies. So, yeah, so put those, if you have any of those suggestions, questions, anything that you'd like to see us cover while we're there, please drop those in the comment section. We already have a few things that we plan to shoot while we're there. Videos that we plan to do, certain folks at Daikin that we want to interview, and certain things that we would like to, you know, record and show you again, those behind the scenes type things. So, but you know, if you have something that you would like to see, please let us know. And even if this chat ends, if our show ends tonight and you think of something later, then email me, and I'm going to put that email at the bottom of our stream here. Give me just a second. If you send an email to this email, hvacguide1@gmail.com, I've got a guy that keeps an eye on that email. He doesn't really monitor it because that's not what it was set up for. That email was actually set up for these shows, for folks to be able to send questions in. And so that email does pop up in certain videos. But send, you know, if you do have something you want us to cover and show on that factory tour, then show, you know, send it to that email. If we end our show tonight and you think of something, then let us know. Ryan says how they test their products in extreme weather, hot and cold. How long do these tests take place? How many weeks, months, and years? Yeah, so funny thing, Ryan, we actually got to tour the Goodman / Daikin facilities before they built the big technology park. For those of you that don't know, Daikin has the largest heating and air factory in, I believe it's the world, it's just the nation. That's what it is. It's the largest one in North America, or this nation, all under one roof. And it's actually the third largest in America, only behind Tesla and Boeing. So, but anyway, the first time we ever went, we got to see behind closed doors some of that R&D testing. And then when they built the new factory, we did not get to see that. And so I did ask them about that. And let me pull my list up here. Give me just a second here. Because I've got a list of our videos and ideas that we're planning to use when we go. R&D testing. Man, I can't type tonight. Extreme temperatures. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I if they let us get back behind, there are certain things that they just simply won't let us, film, and they've already said that, but we're gonna show as much as they're willing to let us show. We're gonna get behind closed doors and show homeowners some of those things that they haven't gotten to see before. There's been times when heat and air guys have seen that stuff and the homeowners never do. Henry says, is the Ream better than the? Thank you for answering all my questions this far. They look comparable based on the model numbers. They both look like 14 SEER systems. I would say, again, as I said before, I would worry more about the installer. I do know that sometimes with home warranty companies, you're not always getting the best installer, but making sure you get certain things in writing. But neither one of those brands scare me. I've got friends that won't install anything but Ream, and I've got other friends that won't install anything but Train. So we all have our preferences, and neither one of those particular brands that you just mentioned scare me. So Ryan says, how long from when someone has an idea about a product, how long does it take to make it to the market for people to buy? That's a good one, Ryan, too. Ideas and a good one. Yep. Garrett says, will Mitsubishi ever make a modern cloud control system for how expensive the systems are? It seems wild that you can't get full control with a third-party thermostat. I think it's going to go the other way around, Garrett. I think there's going to come a time when all brands only make systems that have proprietary communicating thermostats. Obviously I can't answer the question on whether they will ever do anything, because that's the future, and I just don't know the future. But I do think that based on your question, it's going to go the other way around. Garrett says, Ryan, it depends on the product and how committed the company is to testing. Some can take over a year, some can take multiple years. Is there a specific type of product you are interested in? Yeah, I think that I'm just going to ask them. I do know that I requested to talk to the guy that designed and created the Fit as we know it today. So that's going to be one of the type of questions we're going to ask, from conception to finished product. I remember being in another brand's factory years ago when they were testing a certain product, and it was weird because they were testing these prototype products and they weren't even painted yet. So they had this silver galvanized looking metal, and they were just funny looking units. You know, it was like the Terminator version of the heating and air unit. You know, here's an interesting question: how do they decide what color to make their units? Interested in how they decide to brand their products, design, make things stand out. Yeah, I mean, some people might not be interested in that, but I think that's a good point. You know, I mean, they obviously decided on that, and from a marketing standpoint, why did they decide? So, especially when you have brands that make, you know, multiple different colors that almost are kind of contrasting one another and competing with one another, you know? So that's a good point. All right. We are going to answer these last couple questions, guys, and then we are going to wrap up. But I do appreciate your input, especially Ryan dropping those questions in there for our upcoming Daikin's trip. And as we finish up and answer these last few questions, as always, if you guys can share, if you know of a good heating and air company that you would like to plug, you think so highly of them, they're a good company, they deserve to be called out and shared, please do that, where they're located and what their name is, to where they are in the country. Share that as we wrap up tonight's show, so that way other folks that might see this might see that company name and where they're located. Maybe they're located in the same area you are. So if you know a good company, shout them out there. Let's flood this chat with good heating and air companies, and that way we can do them a service for doing a good service. So Garrett says, thanks for the answer. I was hoping you had heard something about the new Mitsubishi things coming down the pipe. Ha ha. Yeah, I think Mitsubishi and Trane, you know, they're so tied in together these days that I will say, and I don't know if this is something that I shouldn't share, but I do know that they're moving certain products that were being made in Texas over to Georgia because of I don't even know what the reason was. Like, there were certain parts that we have been waiting on for a very long time, and they said that they moved the manufacturing of those products to Georgia. So there's one tidbit for you, but that might be more on the Trane side of things than Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi, I think their training facility is in Georgia, actually. So I think I was invited to that years ago, or was at least told about it. Ryan says, are you in the industry? Garrett says, not in the HVAC industry, but am in product development in a different industry. Nice. Send me an email, Garrett, if you're willing to share. Garrett, shout out to Mars in Bellingham, Washington. So shout out to those guys. Again, if you know a good heating and air company, please share who they are and where they're located. And that way we can, show those guys some love, that they deserve for providing a good service, especially this time of year. Ryan says, what's that email again? And that is right there, hvacguide1@gmail.com. Yeah, if you guys have more ideas, which Ryan has been rolling out some good ideas. I can't promise I'm going to get them all done, but I will be sharing a list of video ideas with Daikin, and I think I'm going to be sending that list to them tomorrow, which is why prompted me to ask you guys this. It gives you an opportunity to ask a specific question or a video idea on a specific topic. So again, Garrett shouting out Mars in Bellingham, Washington. If you know a good heating and air company, show them some love, and where they're located, share their name in our chat. TJ says, what idea to help find a leak in my AC? Slow leak where I've tried bubbles, digital detector, ultrasonic detector. Got a refill 2 months ago. Great question. Add some dye. Have some dye added to that system and you'll find that leak. I've been down that road before. You know, you try everything, you beat your head against the wall, and you just can't find that pesky leak. And I know a lot of heating and air guys hate that dye, but there's been a few times where I am adamant that there were leaks that other companies couldn't find it. That's why we got the call. We couldn't find it. We pressurized it, couldn't find that leak. But when we were done and we pulled our vacuum and put our refrigerant back in there, we added dye to that system. And then the next time they had an issue, we found that leak. So add some dye and you'll find it eventually, usually. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap up here. Again, if you have another heating and air company that you'd like to shout out, thanks for joining us. We are going to be back again next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live, answering heating and air questions live. And Garrett says, would love to see a heat pump plus air handler install as a gas furnace replacement. When researching for my system, there wasn't a ton of good YouTube videos out there. All electric is here. I could probably deliver on that because we do that all the time. So I might, be able to show you a video on that. Ryan says, ask Daikin. It's getting late and now I can't talk. Ask Daikin if they plan to bring heat recovery technology to their residential offerings like VRV Life or something new. Wondering why they think about it. They offer it commercially. I think we've talked about this before. I think it's really all about money. But I will put that in there. So yeah, man, we've had a good turnout this week too. So thank you again, guys. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers, so please give us a subscribe. When we get to 100,000, we're going to have a few special guests on our show. And so we got to get to 100,000 so we can, have those folks on there. And we're not going to have them on before then, so don't even ask. But we've got a few special guests we're going to have come on our show as soon as we get 100,000 subscribers. So if you see right down there, it says for more HVAC tips, please subscribe. So, you'll be able to get more info and more heat and air tips as they come out. Finally, TJ says, is there a thermostat that monitors the AC to determine if there is a leak based on longer time to cool? There are thermostats that will notify you. I know Ecobee is one of them. If it's got an extended runtime, they will notify you and have a notification. And there's a few other thermostats too. I just, happen to know that off the top of my head. But I did sit in a class about 6 months ago where they are saying that the government is going to possibly, all right, they're going to eventually make it mandatory for these heating and air systems to have leak detection devices in those systems. Or let me rephrase, the government may not be mandating it, but they're going to start offering it. Maybe that's a better way to say it. So you're going to start seeing heating and air systems offered and installed that have, leak detection of some kind in them and some sort of alert if that were to be the case. So, and then finally, Ryan says, I would love to be able to call in for questions on the live streams. I can research that. Great. I will say we're going to be going to Daikin in a few weeks. And when we're down there, we're still going to do our live show. I'm going to do our live show from down there. And so that'll be fun. Different change of pace. And I'll just have to remember it starts at 7:30 Central instead of 8:30 Eastern. So anyway, we're going to end with that. Make it a great week, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week at 8:30 Eastern. And we'll see you then. Thank you.